Greetings, church. My name is Matt Ratliff, and it is a blessing and my great privilege to serve as the pastor at Haney Chapel United Methodist Church. From wherever and whenever you are joining us to receive this word, welcome in the merciful and mighty name of Christ Jesus. As January 20th, Inauguration Day, approached this year, I found myself wondering just what new vision and new leadership might augur for our nation. Augur is a new word for me. I had heard, of course, of inauguration and knew what that meant, but had never learned the roots of that word. And just in case you're like me, augur is a verb. It means to portend some event or circumstance. In other words, it is something that comes before something else. A reading from the account of the prophet Jonah, the 3rd chapter, after having been deposited on the beach by a fish. Listen now for wisdom and word. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. Holy wisdom, holy word, thanks be to God. Amanda Gorman is 22 years old, the youngest person ever to recite poetry for a presidential inauguration. Her words, while aspirational and inspirational, are also equal parts convicting and breathtaking, as they should be. On Wednesday afternoon, she recited her poem, The Hill We Climb. It begins. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country in a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine. But that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. These words were spoken from the dais which only 2 weeks prior bore witness to the rupture and ruin of a nation that has so idolized hubris, vanity, and selfishness that we have seemingly become capable only of discrimination. Are you in or are you out? And completely incapable of bearing witness to the common experience of humanity, that is, belovedness by God. If Miss Gorman's words are any indication of what this season of chaos, this season of labor is birthing, then we would do well to take note. I hear she's running for president in 2036. You should listen to this woman recite the words of her poem, all 714 of them. But for the sake of honoring our time, I'll read just a few more of them here. She continues, and so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to no one and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Like Jonah, Amanda Gorman burst onto the scene with a prophecy. Jonah didn't give his talk much effort. Just 5 words in Hebrew, 8 in the New Living Translation. That would seem to be auguring a season of the Lord's dissatisfaction and all that entails. Here's the thing, though. Something about Jonah's words to the Ninevites evoked a response. Something about Jonah's words suggested sackcloth, suggested ashes, suggested a fast. So from the very top of society, the king of the sinful city, down to the lowest serf and even the livestock, all creatures put on sackcloth and ashes and likewise observed a fast. Sackcloth and ashes make a king and a serf equal as sinners. It is a sign of differences set aside. The fast would only inform them further that all of us are utterly dependent on God for mercy, that we all receive pardon from our sin because of God's gift of grace. Jonah may not have seen fit to explain any further than to portend the overturning of Ninevite society, but perhaps he was being more poetic with his prophecy than I'm giving him credit for here, and I'll say more on that in a few minutes. Undeniably, Miss Gorman offers a tremendous amount of thought, care, and craftsmanship. Her 714 words of wisdom are certainly more explicit than Jonah's, so friends, I hope you heard it. Just like Jonah's, Miss Gorman's words seem to suggest a fast. To put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. I've spent the month of January engaged in more than pondering the nation's future. I've also had the privilege and pleasure of taking an intensive course at the seminary called Good News and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Part of our task in the course is to search out passages from the young adult series that demonstrate gospel truth, or what our professor and others have called good news, and to talk about what, why, and how those things stand out. In the wizarding world, there is a sentient hat capable of independent thought and action that has played a significant role in the life of every young witch and wizard in J.K. Rowling's imagination. The hat's primary directive is to read the mind and character of each new student to the magical boarding school Hogwarts and divide each class into one of 4 houses or school teams. One of the hat's few apparent other duties is to deliver a song at the start of each year's sorting ceremony. The song usually just introduces the hat and what's about to happen during the sorting. The ceremony is an inauguration of sorts, and the sorting hat's song certainly augurs the new school year. Occasionally, rarely, the hat will give a warning, but only when the school is in serious danger. 1995, Harry's 5th year at Hogwarts, was a dark and dangerous time for the school and the whole wizarding world. Ideological rifts in the magical community threatened to bring the whole society crashing down around them, and the Sorting Hat's song portends the harrowing potential. The song begins by describing the relationship between the founders of the school. They were best friends and the 4 greatest magicians of the age, united in the common goal of making the best magic school in the world. But alas, they were 4 different people. And so the Sorting Hat song goes on to explain, had different ideas about who should come to the school to learn. These differences became too much, and each of the friends sought to exercise their own way over the others. For one of the friends, whose biases and opinions began to exclude and ostracize good and powerful witches and wizards, this all became too much, and he left the school, leaving bitterness and a blood feud as his legacy. The story sounds a little familiar. Here's the relevant bit for you not Harry Potter fans that I lost a couple of minutes ago. At the end of the Sorting Hat's 1995 song, they too suggest a fast. See if you can catch it. And now the Sorting Hat is here, and you all know the score. I sort you into houses because that's what I am for. But this year I'll go further. Listen closely to my song. Though condemned I am to split you, still I worry that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. Oh, know the perils, read the signs, the warning history shows, for our Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes, and we must unite inside her or will crumble from within. I have told you, I have warned you, let the sorting now begin. One more time. Though condemned I am to split you, still I worry that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. The reality of the matter, friends, is that we don't need a sorting hat to separate us into camps based on how we look at and approach the world. That is really almost a birthright, that's really almost a product of our birthright, rather. Where we were raised, what we do for a living, who our parents voted for, what denomination our grandparents belonged to. You get the picture. The sorting is kind of inevitable, but it is by no means insurmountable. The hat tells the Hogwarts community to look to history, to know the perils, to interpret the signs, and then offers the prescription that will keep the whole world from coming down. Community. Community that sets aside differences, that fasts from disunity. This is the only thing that will keep the school from crumbling from the inside. Amanda Gorman's poem repeats this transcendent truth. If we are to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. It is because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. This is the era of just redemption we feared at its inception. But there is good news, though. She writes, we did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. Friends, I think this captures and resonates with the essence of the experience of the wrath-fearing Ninevites, the divided magical community of the wizarding world, and us in this age of tribalism and ferocious partisanship. We've been expecting our world to be overturned, and it can, and probably should be. The Ninevites became acquainted with conviction. Knowing they were disappointing God and afraid wrath would destroy their society, they changed their habits. In the face of Jonah's terminal prophecy, they commiserated together and discovered that as they faced what was before them, instead of focusing on what divided them, they experienced a different kind of overturning. not being overthrown, but instead transformed. Miss Gorman's poem concludes with lines that describe a future when, as a nation fasting from sowing separation, we rise up from our corners and emerge to face the challenges before us together. And I cannot wrap this up any more eloquently, so I'll just lift this up and let her take us home. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left with. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the windswept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover. In every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. In all the names that create, redeem, and sustain. Amen, and may it be so.